Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dr. Cammy and Karen Go Keto. And we are here today with an interview with a very special guest, and that is Mike Collins. And he has a lot of information to give us on the sugar addiction and the emotional aspect of, or the emotional link. And Cammy, give us some input and introduce Mike to us.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're delighted here to have Mike Collins with us. He is the sugar-free man. He has been off sugar for over 30 years. He's very experienced. He's helped hundreds and probably, tens of thousands of people through this whole program. He knows lots of people, has been instrumental in starting a movement toward getting off of sugar. America makes that very difficult to do, and he is a man who is given a lot of support to that. I went through his coaching program to become a sugar addiction coach. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful for people who are interested in trying to help people through this difficult part of life. So I realized very early into my keto experience, about 3 months in, that sugar was a big difficulty for me, anything sweet, and that even the different kinds of sweet, the stevia and the aspartame or anything that was sweet was causing me to continue cravings for sugar, which was not good for my keto diet. So I'm going to ask Mike to just kind of start a little bit, if you want to just share a little bit how you originally got started, and then talk a little bit about the missing link that you feel is present in recovery from sugar addiction in a lot of the other programs.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's an honor. Thanks for having me on. So I guess it goes back another generation. A lot of people have heard my story about my mom, who was my favorite sugar junkie. But her mother died when she was only 8 years old. And they lived near a country store. Actually, they owned the country store across the way. The family did. And my grandfather, they had to move in with my aunt, my great aunt, their aunt, or his sister. And what they did was he made an arrangement with his cousin Jim that anytime my mom walked into that store, that she could have any candy she wanted. Just put it on his tab. And that was a wonderful thing to do for a 8-year-old who just lost her mom. But it really cemented in this thing that I believe my mother died with. And I believe she died of sugar addiction, not Alzheimer's. And she believed that sugar was love. She really did believe that, having sugar, giving sugar was a kind and good thing to do. And that's how I grew up, covered up with sugar. I mean, just crazy amounts of it. We could have unfettered access to the sugar bowl. We could put as much sugar as we wanted on the cornflakes and scrape a half an inch of sugar at the bottom with the milk and the cereal. I mean, it was wild. And then, the soda, didn't have enough money for soda. So we had our own Kool-Aid, which we made with 3 cups of sugar instead of 1 cup of sugar. I mean, it was wild. And all the candy, my mother had a stash. She didn't think we knew where it was, her own stash. And we just always had candy and, forever. Anyway, fast forward, that's how I grew up. And I ran into beer at 14 or 15. And this is important in what Cammy had described, is that the emotional part. I knew that it changed how I felt, beer did, because I didn't realize that with sugar when I was young. And most people don't in today's world. And so what happened was I knew that, if I drank beer, I could talk to girls at the dance. I was a little shy. And that, that party lasted till I was 28 and I got sober. And as I was and we could talk about that, but, it's kind of probably another podcast. But as I got sober, I wanted to get healthy. And I read this book about sugar and it just kind of stuck in my mind, right?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you. So what was the name of the book, and was it Sugar Blues? Did you ever read Sugar Blues?
That was the book. Absolutely. The book was Sugar Blues.
It's incredible.
Sugar Blues was written by a guy named William Duffy, and he ended up marrying Gloria Swanson, the famous movie
Mhm.
star. And they promoted that book all over the country in a lot of ways. And it was weird because there was this awareness at that time. It happened again in the 90s with sugar busters. So there's been these
Mhm.
times in history where sugar has been, there's been an awareness of sugar, but it just kind of got overridden uh, by people's love for it. And maybe, let me just put it this way, people's addiction for it, okay? Addiction
Mhm.
to it. So anyway, the rest of the story is that I went on to have a regular career. I raised 2 sugar-free kids from the womb until they were 6 years old. And I do believe in my heart that their brain developed better. I mean, to tell you the stories, you would think that I was lying or bragging or both, or just dad bragging or whatever. But they are card-carrying geniuses, perfect scores on their college entrance exams kind of stuff. And I just really believe that their brain developed better. I'm not that smart, neither was their mother. And so they said I should write a book. So I did in 2018, The Last Resort Sugar Detox. And I started coaching. I bought sugaraddiction.com in 09 and started giving out good information. Excuse me. But it wasn't until the book and I started coaching, 5 or 6 years ago, that it really kind of took off. And then the pandemic just put it all on steroids. People were, you remember where the shelves were bare of sugar and flour, and people were doing it at home, and the sales spiked of candy and ice cream and everything. And so people really got concerned. They started gaining a lot of weight. So the business and the whole coaching thing took off. But to answer Cammy's question, the bottom line, I believe, that I discovered was that connection between my mother's belief sugar was love, that feeling, and my change of state when I drank beer was real simple. That one of the things that's missing in the zeitgeist in the $78 billion diet industry is that this is a substance use disorder. This is a sugar addiction, and people don't want to realize that. And you need a substance use disorder recovery. And the focus of substance use disorder, it's a very common construct in the world of alcohol and drugs, that if you started using alcohol and drugs at 14 or 15, you stop growing emotionally. Your life's upside down, your finances, your career, your relationships, everything is messed up because you never solved any issues. You never solved any problems. And one of the things that we teach is that we bring it back to, and really this became very evident to me during the pandemic and before. I knew it was an issue, but I didn't know it was literally identical to substance use disorder. And the diet industry is all still hooked on this eat less, exercise more. Most of the
Mhm.
people come for weight loss, Um, and so it's really been an evolution, and super difficult to communicate to people because nobody wants to be an addict and no one wants to do this extra work after they get detoxed, right? Everybody thinks that they can detox and then kind of go back to using sugar normally. And some people can, but most people that come to us biochemically cannot ingest sugar without setting up cravings for more sugar. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's the short version, the podcast version. I can answer any questions about it, but that's kind of how I ended up here, and the important message around, what we're talking about.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed in my journey through this keto lifestyle and pulling off of the sugar is what I call ALKs, which are acts of loving kindness. And I've really beefed up, so to speak, carnivore. That's for you, Karen. um, the activities that I do in my life that provide self-care. One of the things I do is sit in the jacuzzi, and I stretch at night. I do my yoga. I read my books. I lay down and rest in the afternoon. I'm very lucky and fortunate and grateful that I have the ability to take some time to do these things for myself, because so many people are so busy with life and all the activities and things they have to do throughout the day. But really taking the time to nourish yourself in a way that doesn't involve food, I think is also really important in the healing of, coming off of this, disorder, this addiction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. It's one of the main things that we teach is that most people, and this is very common again in the drug and alcohol world, is most people most of our clients are women, and society, and women of a certain age, so they're above 40 or 50 usually, and society, as in general, in that time period, has taught them to be the giver, the caregiver, to take care of their family and their spouse and whatever. And they are what is commonly referred to in the recovery world as codependent, meaning they are always helping others, right? They've neglected their own self-care, exactly what you're talking about, Cammy. It's like they've neglected taking care of themselves. They actually feel guilty when they're taking care of themselves, that they're not taking time for the kids or the spouse or the boss or whatever. And it's really, they feel guilty, and the cure is feel the guilt and do it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if they spend an extra couple dollars or an hour on getting a massage or a manicure and a pedicure or whatever, anything that's relaxing to them, like you say, a nice hot bath or whatever, something that taking time for themselves is not something they're used to. And this is strange. You would think that people would be really good at this, but it's amazing that you have to help teach them these skills of self-care. So you're 100% right on that one for sure.
What do you feel, Mike, is the most, well, maybe not the most important, but if there's this link of the emotional aspect to the sugar addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and clearly, women or families start when the baby is born and starts, chewing on give the baby a cookie to quiet the baby.
Right.
It works for both the baby and the mom, right? So you can see how it starts really, really young. And I would say that when you're 40 years old, 40, 50, 60 years old, all of it, now you're ready to actually admit that maybe what you've been doing was not good, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe it was not good for both your family and for yourself. And it's easy to unpack it, because I've had this conversation with a lot of different people who have children, and I would say preteens or teens,
Mm-hmm.
because of what I've read in the carnivore realm, and with women that I know that have teenagers that struggle with anxiety or depression and are
Right.
in, they're in hospital, they hurt themselves and things like that. And when I say, go check out the keto diet, go check out the carnivore diet, they're like, "Oh, I couldn't get my kid to change the way they eat." So
Mm-hmm.
I understand, like, and I get change the person who can change the quickest and the easiest first before you can, before it trickles down to somebody else. But you can see the epidemic, and the 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 worst thing is there's never been more of a government uh, backlash against sugar, right? The government and industry, so many industries will support fighting sugar, anybody who wants to get rid of sugar. I live in the Chicagoland area. We had a tax, right? We had a tax, and it really hurt the mayor who put the tax on soda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, you know what, you can't tax it, and there was a huge backlash. And this wasn't like a regular soda. This was like the jumbo sodas or something like that. It was, I don't know. It never really took effect, but it did ruin the political, the political,
Right.
the the person had. So what is your feeling about big pharma or the sugar industry or the government? Because the government for GIs gave cigarettes, chocolate, and pretty much easy alcohol. That was always, my father was in the Air Force. You could get cheap alcohol on the
Right.
base,
Right.
right? So they were supporting that, but they kind of stopped it in a way. But there's so many other moving pieces to keep sugar in our diet.
Well,
What's
that's
your
a great
thoughts?
question. That's a great question. Like originally, I've come a little bit to the other side on this. Um, the famous or infamous now probably Dr. Robert Lustig has always been a believer of that this needs to be a policy thing from the government down, from big pharma. We've got a whatever big food and like that. And I've always believed that it needs to be a grassroots movement from the ground up, kind of a Margaret Mead, never doubt what 1,000 committed people can do.
Hmm.
And that's actually happening. There was a huge meeting in London to uh,
Hmm.
in this month as we're recording this to resubmit to the ICD-10, the World Health Organization, which is similar to the DSM here, to try and get it named as an addiction. And I personally believe, and have still, and will continue to be, the grassroots movement, where it comes from the bottom up. And one of the things you were mentioning, and this has been frustrating for me, super frustrating actually, is that, if a woman finds out she's pregnant, she can literally, even if she has a substance use disorder, she'll quit drinking that day, or quit drugs that day, or
Hmm.
throw cigarettes out on the way out of the doctor's office, and is able to quit, like, because she is committed to this. And I just really believe that if this needs to get down to childbearing age women. But across all of my contemporaries, you guys know about the Quit Sugar Summit. Everyone, interviewed 400 of the world's leading experts, and all of them have the same client base, which is women. And I like to say 40 to 80, but it's really closer to 50 to 80.
Hmm.
And exactly what you said. There's two reasons, I think, for what you said, which is they've struggled their whole life with body image and diet and weight. And this sounds sexist or whatever, but most would agree that, it's the good girl's drug, and it was as they grew up. It definitely was in my mother's case. And if there's an addiction in the family, equal, men do the drinking and women do the sugar. But it's just true. I mean, it really is. And they have come to a realization, I believe, at 40 or 50, that the every diet they've tried has said quit the white stuff, and they've been able to do every diet, but they've not been able to quit the white stuff. I'll give you an example. This is kind of crazy. So I was a speaker at KetoCon, which is now rebranded to Hack Your Health, last year. And I went really hard on exactly what we've been talking about here, which is the substance use disorder, addiction. I figured I was preaching to the choir, and I wanted the message to get out to their connections and their clients and their friends and their family, kind of reframe what they had done with the keto diet and their success on the keto diet. Now, these are people that have flown into Austin, Texas, paid for the event, paid for the plane, paid for the airplane, paid for the hotel, and food and everything. And I said, okay, now do you have any questions? There's about 180 people in the breakout room, standing room only across the wall, and nobody says anything. A couple softball questions, but nobody really says anything. And I'm just, blown away that no one is concerned or wants to talk about this. Well, no exaggeration. That was a Friday morning. I was there for the whole weekend, kind of walking around, listening to other speakers. And what happened was, no exaggeration, out of the 180, 50 people at different times walked up to me and said some version of, I love keto. I've lost 20 pounds, but I can't quit the sugar. I love keto, but I can't get off the sugar. Whatever. They've all had some version of that story to tell me privately because they didn't want to be embarrassed and raise their hand and ask a question. And so it really is, they call getting off of sugar, carbohydrates, and keto the keto flu. Well, if you put the things together, put them right next to each other, the keto flu is sugar addiction withdrawals, right? The
Mm-hmm.
symptoms are exactly the same. And I don't even think the keto folks are they leave out the depression, the anxiety, the worry, the lethargy. There's a lot of things they leave out, that we don't leave out that are very real when you try and get off sugar. So yeah, it's a misperception. I think it's a again, it's just not out to the general public enough, and that's why we do these podcasts to try and get the message out there more.
Well, Cammy and I really started our journey August of 2023 when we launched this because we were at the Low-Carb USA symposium on metabolic health. And I think Cammy and I, because I've been doing keto on and off or low carb on and off for probably a good 5-10 years.
Right.
And I thought it would be super easy to transition my entire lifestyle to say no to sugar, right? To go really more keto. I had done primal for a while, but primal allows for some sweets, right? And some like carrots and things like that, especially.
Mhm.
And I think that what I've learned is what Cammy and I kind of began with was it's a transition. It really is a lot of ups and downs. It's
Mhm.
the transition is to say I can give up sugar today. I can give up sugar for a week. Then I had this chocolate malt addiction. When my mom went into the hospital after one of her strokes, this place was right by the hospital, and so I would go every single day. Well, she was only in the hospital for 5 days, but I kept going and I kept going. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because that clearly is a love connection, right? I'm worried about my mom. It's very soothing to have the chocolate malt. It goes back to my childhood. I hate saying that to everybody because I don't want to trigger anybody with that particular food, but it's interesting that I don't even think about that place anymore. I can drive by it and I don't even, it's like it doesn't trigger me at all, but I can tell you before it would trigger me to where I couldn't stop. I had to go. And then it would trigger me that I would drive around the block and think about going, or I would drive down the street and keep thinking about going. And I would get into the
Or
line.
salivate. I used to
Yeah.
salivate.
The anchors are strong in the dopamine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like you say, the worry about your mom.
And so for me, what I've learned is you don't have to expect it to happen overnight. The addiction didn't really happen overnight, probably, right? It
Mhm.
it was probably just although I don't know, maybe that first rush, I think that what they show with the mice studies, I think they're mice studies, that it
Mhm.
doesn't take long at all to get the brain of the mouse to look like a heroin addict, right? It wants the sugar even more than it wants the heroin
Yeah.
as far as the brain function. So I don't know. It might only take a little bit. It might have only taken to soothe me with a couple of Lorna Doones. We had Lorna Doones and Chips Ahoy, I think, when we were in kindergarten for our little nap time.
Right.
And I'm sure they liked it, right? They would, we'd quiet down for a while with our sugar rush, and then our little
Crash and
downtime.
burn.
Yeah, exactly. So what does your program look like? Like what are they signing up for if they sign up for your program? I know you probably have a couple of programs, but give us a taste of what you offer.
Yeah, no, thanks. So the base has always been, and it started years ago with the book and some community. Originally started on Facebook, which has moved off of Facebook. But I call this the ticket to the game, and the ticket to the game is detox, is abstinence. Okay, people have to experience abstinence at least once in their life. Okay, they have to get off it completely, not like in a diet way where you reduce it, or you do it for 10 days or 20 days or something, 21 days. It's a program where you get off the sugar for a period of time enough to let the emotions bubble up, Again, this is the missing ingredient in the diet world. When the emotions begin, you guys know as well as I do, and you've seen the research, it's very common, it's almost folklore, that anybody that loses any amount of weight gains it all back in the first year. That's 90+%, 95 almost percent of people who lose any amount of weight gain it all back in the first year. And it's very easily explainable by my program, meaning, so we start on January 1st. You're all excited. The life's good. The family's good. The relationship's good. The money's good. The job's good. Everything's okay. And you go exercise, and exercise really is for brain renewal, not necessarily burning calories. I don't even believe in burning calories, right? And so, okay, you're going forward and you lose 20 pounds, you lose 30 pounds, and you're everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, there's a little blip in your life, whatever it is, and you start to either remember some abuse or remember your childhood or remember some missed love or whatever, or, there's a financial issue or a relationship issue. And you don't think consciously, like, Friday afternoon, you want to go have a beer because you've had a rough week. It's really more deep in the limbic brain where it somehow rationalizes that you can have one slice of cake at the wedding because you've lost 30 pounds, right? And if I heard that story once, I've heard it 100,000 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. I was doing great. And then I just had this one piece of cake. And then, I gained the 30 pounds back and added 5 more. Mm-hmm. And the reason, like I said, is very explainable. And in our program, we do A, get you detoxed, and B, put you on a program where you are in community, which I know is an important thing in this world, because people that don't eat sugar are really kind of looked at strangely. Like, you quit drinking, yeah. You quit smoking, good job. You quit using sugar, and they're like, what? Why? How come? You look great. You've lost 50 pounds. Why not just have one piece or one drink or whatever? And so it's really a literal, like I said, get you detoxed with help and understanding that you need to incorporate this emotional piece, this emotional recovery in. And then the real work begins, because although the physical cravings are lessened, the emotional, psychological cravings for being able to self-soothe with sugar are still there. We call it the difference between effort-based dopamine and substance-based dopamine. What we've done as human beings is we've, in manufacturing and sugar and the growth of sugar from slavery forward, and probably before, but definitely from slavery forward, is we have learned to hack a millions of year old process that was created to find food and sex, the dopamine. When I use the word dopamine in these talks, I mean dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, oxytocin, adrenal glands, endorphins, cannabinoid receptors. All of the brain and body reward systems are affected by sugar. And when you use these drugs and change how you feel, the brain gets trained that's how it gets its dopamine. It doesn't get it by going for a walk. It doesn't get it by going for yoga. It has been trained to eat cookies on the couch and get the same feeling. Now, this is, again, a millions years old evolutionary thing that was created to find food and sex. Okay. And so it's a very powerful system within the body. And the one thing I want to stress here is that for 100 years and still today, in the diet industry and in the weight loss industry and in the health industry and the health coaching industry, is everyone is focused on the body. We all know that sugar causes weight gain and diabetes too, and probably Alzheimer's. They're calling diabetes, Alzheimer's diabetes 3, you know what I mean? what is less known is been the theme of this little conversation is that this attachment to the emotional life, the attachment to the addiction process. I'll give you an example. You guys talked about this event that you went to, and Doug's been on our seminar, the founder of all that, Doug Reynolds, and most of those speakers have been on our events. And they did not start speaking, and I went to the first few, they did not start speaking about addiction until the fourth or fifth event. Okay, now today they have entire days before the event or after the event about addiction, right? And that was mostly a lot. Joan Iflin started to speak on their stages and started to get it out there, but it really it has been a shift within the metabolic society there and the low carb events. And this is across the board. Dr. Noakes down in South Africa, same exact thing. Didn't talk about addiction till, just a few years back. And now it's becoming an important part of the programs. So it's really, it's a little bit of what we call reframing. You're reframing what the problem is and then presenting it in an ordered way. Detox, support, peer support, community meetings. We have 2 and 3 and 4, sometimes Zoom meetings a day in support. So there's ingredients to A, get off it, and B, stay off it. So that's kind of that's a long version, but the short version of what we do.
So can you talk just a little bit briefly, Mike, about the 30-day detox challenge and that you offer and how you do the videos every day, so that somebody really gets a hands-on, you do a video every day and you have a journal and, you have the support meetings.
Right. Yeah, no, thanks. But I originally started the challenge because the questions are all the same at the beginning. And what's happened in 20,000 plus detoxes is that pretty much with, like a bell curve, we can tell you every single day for the first 30 days what it's going to be like, what's going to happen, how you're going to feel, what you're going to need to do to help yourself through this part. And I come into your inbox and you then move over to the platform. It's off of social media. It's, separate. And you can walk through the detox with everyone else. As you said, there's support meetings, all certified coaches, 3 and 4 times a day. And you're never more than a couple hours away from plugging into a support meeting and getting your questions answered and, not feeling like you're alone in this. 80%, gang, of our clients do not have spousal support. So imagine being in a family, a household, where 80% of the folks are, your spouse doesn't understand. You've tried so many diets, they're just not on board yet with you changing your food again in the family. And then the kids, you mentioned it earlier about the kids and that and the age of the client is that, that it's like the kids, like they don't want to do it either. You know what I mean? They're not interested in mom's new diet, right? And so sometimes we suggest people go stealth for a little bit. They don't, announce it right away. Now, eventually you have to say something, but, we kind of get them through it. So the 30-day challenge is just a really structured, simply because of our experience over, a decade of doing this, and how many people we've got to exposed to this, that days 3 to 5 for the average person are going to be the roughest. You're going to be, and if you quit caffeine, which we suggest because it's wired to the chocolate and wired to the coffee and the tea, you're going to be kind of incapacitated in days 3 to 5, could last as long as 7 to 10 days before the sun kind of comes out again and you can feel a little bit better. And then, sometimes the discussion that we've had through most of this talk is that the emotional stuff starts right away. you're a little weepy. You feel this feeling of impending doom. One of the common phrases is, Mike, I'm losing my mind. And I understand it because they've used this crutch for many, many years to soothe themselves, to self-soothe. And when you take it away completely, all of these quote unquote legal substances, these sugars, these flours, these caffeines, then the folks are, these are usually non-drinkers. Some of them do, but most of them are non-drinkers. That's not their issue. Their issue has been the sugar. They're really emotionally having a difficult time. Even folks that have had a lot of therapy, people that are doing SSRIs, depression meds, they're really having some difficulty when they take away this additional, coping mechanism, this self-soothing mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So we walk them through that. And one of the things that's missing, as I mentioned, in the diet world and the health and health coaching world, is that people are not understanding that 7, 10, 15, 20, 30 days into a detox, you start to have these emotional, and everybody's a little bit different. Some people it's very chaotic and very, they're scary. It's kind of scary. And some people maybe have an exercise program and they kind of walk through it because they've ramped up their exercise program. And you can see the connection there, as I mentioned before. Someone who really is a hard exerciser and came in with that protocol, came in with that habit, they have an easier time because they usually end up ramping up their exercise, and that creates the dopamine, serotonin, or and so it's a weird. Each one is a little different. That's why we have coaching and coaches, and that's why we have support meetings, because everybody's going to present with a different type of detox. And so we've seen them all, and we just help them through it, basically.
And from experience, I went yesterday to a sugar detox meeting, and it was interesting because all of us were dealing with difficult things going on in our lives that weren't really related to sugar, but were related to coping and, going through times. And so we all, because I thought, God, I can't wait to share that I'm going through whatever. And then everybody was going through whatever. So you really do get a sense of community that even reaches beyond the sugar addiction and pulls you in to where and I have phone numbers in my phone and, people that you can reach even outside of the meetings. So it really is a wonderful way to be successful.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because the bonding that happens when people are, post sugar addiction or sugar detox after they've got off of this stuff is amazing. And there's a lot of studies, heck, even like cancer survivors, your chances of success in cancer survival after you put it in remission or had a surgery or chemo or whatever go through the roof, double, triple sometimes, when you join a survivors group, a peer survivors group. And in the world of substance use disorder, that's really been the only cure. I love the phrase, treatment is discovery and meetings are recovery. You know what I mean? So this idea, I think, is that we need to break through into the general public. And this is like a good therapist saying the same message over and over, is get people to understand that there is an emotional component to their abuse of sugar, and that if they were to focus on that part of it, they would get a lot better than if they focused on calories and exercise and the food they're eating. There's a great saying we use that, most people come for the vanity, weight loss. Come for the vanity and stay for the sanity. It's really the brain. This is a brain illness, right? And when we get that out into the world, I think the whole world changes. So it's been a journey. It sure has.
Well, Mike, I do have to leave and then move on to another thing, helping my mom get ready for her talking therapy.
Okay.
So thank you so much. You guys keep going if you want, and I'll let me know when. Just remember, Mike, you have to stay on. until it says you're uploaded. Otherwise, it stops the upload. All
No worries.
right. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you at the Low Carb USA conference this year.
I may be down there in the San Diego one. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's gonna be on mental health. Georgia E has a new book out that we're reading, and she's gonna be like the keynote speaker.
All right. No,
So
she's
it's
been
time.
I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time for a sugar addiction one to go back. And you know what? As you were speaking, Mike, we need those little support buttons. Like the AIDS thingy. And
Agree.
you know how they had it was yellow for, it's red for AIDS, and it's yellow for, like when we had the Gulf War and stuff. We
Yeah.
need one for sugar addiction or carnivore, or for people who are going to be off sugar.
I love it. No, I do.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
agree.
purple. I know
100%.
there's
Yeah.
purple out there, but
We
Purple's
need
probably already out there. It probably has to be like lime green or something.
all the colors are getting covered up, but yeah, we'll figure.
Yeah. Or maybe it has to be a different shape.
So, Mike, I wanted to talk about just briefly about the diets that you do, the borderline foods, and how the diets that you see people stay successfully off of the sugar, and
Yeah.
how carnivore comes into that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been an evolution. My own personal evolution is, and there's a lot of this going on. There's a lot of recovering vegans out there, recovering vegetarians out there who, and I was one of them. And we started out, and still, I do believe that a vegetarian can get off processed sugar. My first coach was a vegetarian. She's still doing well. And, but I think they don't get enough healthy fats. It's really truly been an evolution for me in interviewing 400 of the world's leading experts and knowing how sciencey, citizen sciencey, the keto and carnivore people are. And hell, I use my own children as a guinea pig experiment. I have no problem using my own body, and I have my whole life. And nothing to do with the ethics of animals and all that kind of stuff. It's always been about health for me. And so I try and gravitate and test my own body as the guinea pig, the guy who did it first in the program, to see how these things work. And the story is pretty stark for me personally, where, and a lot of now, like hundreds of our folks who have kind of traveled the same road, is that I was a vegetarian, a vegan, a raw food vegan, a fruitarian. I've tried every little thing that I could. And 7 years ago, when I began interviewing these people, I was pretty close to veganish, kind of, I eat a little fish, but I also had adult acne, had rosacea. I had these basal cells on my forehead that had been diagnosed by a doctor. You can't see them now, but they started to cut them off on me, right? They started to take them. They were literally, I had a standing appointment to remove these basal cells, cancerous basal cells. And I ran across a woman. I was the chairman of the Food Addiction Institute, and I worked with MDs and PhDs. And this one woman was on the board. She had been sober for 50 years, so she got my attention. And she'd been grain-free and sugar or fruit-free for 25 years. And now this time, now remember, I'm 25 plus years, no flour, no sugar, no caffeine, and I'm still, I'm in my 50s, and I'm looking like I'm, 15. And people would comment, good friends would comment and kind of, what are you, 15? You got pimples all the time, right? And so I started to move in the, more animal-based product stuff, and started to incorporate meat into my diet, fatty fish into my diet, and started to eliminate. I eliminated the grains when I spoke to this woman, Cynthia, and the grains, the fruit. I used to eat a lot of fruit because it was kind of a hangover. I would eat the fruit in the morning, kind of a hangover from my fruitarian and vegetarian days, and I would eat lots of rice, lots of oatmeal. I ate oatmeal every day for 25 years, oats and bananas, whatever. And so I just stopped all that stuff in one day after I talked with her. And I ended up like 60 days later, and it hasn't in 7 years, no acne. The rosacea, the only thing I wanted when I stopped drinking is not to have a big red nose like my grandfather. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't want to have that alcoholic nose. And then the basal cells just disappeared. Like literally diagnosed along my hairline because I lifeguarded as a kid with no sunscreen or no hat, and I had damaged the hell out of my face, and all of that went away. The most important part of it is I was approaching 60 or 50 something years old, and my parents were both dying of Alzheimer's, right? And so I was starting to have these cognitive lapses, literally like to the point where I would go from one browser to the next, and I could not remember like what I was going over there for. And like not like walking into a room and forgetting what I was doing in there. And that was scary as hell. And so about 6 months later, that went away. And I kind of went back to my normal processing power. So it really just me personally, and then I've had these same stories and experiences with people, and if they can and if they're willing to have people start on a move towards a more keto centered or even carnivore, as you mentioned, diet, just for their healing. Now, I've seen a lot of people, even in that movement, kind of go back a little bit and add a little fruit and do different things. But I think for the initial detox, the initial change, the initial year or so, people, have got to move away from definitely grains, definitely heavy fruit. One of the things I always say is if you want to get off sugar, study fructose. The science of fructose is not that old, really in depth, okay? And the science in the last 3 to 5 years, since I've been interviewing all the fructose experts in the world, has been exploding, right? And to the point where one of the guys, Richard Johnson, is funded by the government, and he believes that if he blocks the fructose pathway, he can cure alcoholism. Okay. The fructose pathway, if you get really into this, what it does to the gut, what it does to the epithelial cells in your intestines, where it loosens the tight junctions. And moreover, what I've been talking about is what I call fructose use disorder, which is, if you think about it, we only got fructose once or twice a year when fruit was ripe, okay, and a little bit if you wanted to risk getting the honey from the bees, but it was so minuscule yearly, and it's completely vestigial. There's no human bodily function that requires fructose. It can only be processed in the liver. And my, I guess, message is that fructose, and there's a lot of Dr. Johnson and other people, a lot of proof of becoming available that it's affecting the brain. It's becoming a an understanding of, and if you look at it with, when the animals would, clean the tree off in a day or two, and the hybridization of fruit is so different. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not the same fruit as it used to be. Okay. It's not like it was, years ago, it was little tiny crab apples, and, a banana doesn't even look like a banana anymore. It's just a giant seed pod. And there was very little sweet taste. And now, seedless oranges, seedless grapes, seedless watermelons. These things can't procreate in nature. They can't they can't grow in nature. They have to be grafted. And so they're just literally fructose bombs, okay? And we all know, people don't realize this, I don't think, maybe, half of the sugar, table sugar molecule is fructose, and half is glucose, right? And we need glucose. But the fructose has been, I think, for me, is a big thought problem or thought issue, is the fructose has really come to the forefront as what we discussed through the whole podcast, is that the emotional or mental game is being affected mostly by the fructose, okay? yes, it's tearing up the body. It can only be processed in the liver. It's what causes fatty liver. Okay. It's what loosens up the gut. If you really dig into the science of fructose, then you'll understand why moving away from, and most of the vegetables that you have and most of the nuts that you have have all been hybridized to take bitterness out of them, and they have a lot of fructose in them. Like, and it's minuscule, not minuscule compared to candy or whatever, but it really is it needs more research, and it needs more people who try these ideas, you know what I mean? And see how they feel, and see if they don't put their A1C back in place and their blood sugar back in place, because, and especially people that have been dealing with this as an addiction. That's important. So anyway, that's kind of the whole, not the whole thing. It's a very deep subject that I have many interviews on our summits about. And the last one I was ending with Dr. Johnson, we said, "What about fructose use disorder?" He goes, his jaw dropped open, because in his research over years and funding by the government, this fructose pathway is a super important piece of the puzzle as to why this is difficult for about a third of people. About a third of people biochemically can't use sugar, genuinely. And a third about harmful users, and a third are normal. And that kind of tracks with the obesity numbers as well. But you can be a thin sugar addict, but mostly people who are overweight or obese have a sugar issue.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to say that my last hemoglobin A1C was 5.7. So next time I'll be in normal range and no longer pre-diabetic. That was the last thing for me to do, was get diabetes. So I'm sure glad that I made it in here before that, because being in medical school and watching people lose their limbs on a regular basis, I trained in San Antonio, Texas, at the Bexar County Hospital, and a big place for all the diabetics to come. And
yeah,
pretty scary stuff that can go on there. So,
yeah. There's a doc in New Zealand, Tasmania, I believe. Gary Fettke, he's got a YouTube video, "Is fruit good for you?" And he's an orthopedic surgeon. He got tired of cutting people's feet off. He just was like, it was ridiculous. And so he started talking, researching, and now he talks a lot about this kind of stuff. It's sad, and people are not. I've seen so many remissions of type 2 diabetes, of weight loss and thyroid and lupus and chronic fatigue, and it just goes on and on.
The energy level.
Rheumatoid arthritis is a freaking paper tiger. There's no one that truly gets off sugar whose joints don't stop hurting. It's just the same. It is sugar addiction. Yeah, exactly. It is sugar addiction.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. I so appreciate everything. I'd love to do another interview and just talk about what you've learned through all the people that you've interviewed for your Quit Sugar Summits. That would be really a wonderful little, anecdote, little, phrases, just little things that you've heard, through all your experience. And I'm so grateful that you're here for us. Thank you so much. It takes courage. It takes.
Well, you guys are doing what we're hoping happens all over the world, where, you start your own podcast and you start spreading the message. And this is a super important part of what we talked about earlier, is that grassroots movement of people spreading the message. Citizen scientists. I just love that term. They're people who are not connected to the world, but now with the internet, everybody can read the papers, everybody can read the science, the peer-reviewed studies, everybody can be part of the process to help get it done. So you guys are doing a great thing, and appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, we'll see you next time, and thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me.
All right, take care.